Welcome to Throne Unpopular Opinions. I am doing this again. I am doing this again. And just like every single time that I am repeating myself, I will keep it quicker, which might just actually be a good practice for usual videos. That like my mic dies first and then I get annoyed. And then when I do it again, I'm far more concise. Les Mis, The Wretched by Victor Hugo. Now, where do I start? We will start with the background. I said I'd never read this book, but the book found me. The book haunted me. It just wouldn't leave me alone. It kept finding me in in the internet sphere, in the bookstore, quotes on Pinterest. It wouldn't be left alone. So I bought it at the end of the semester, started reading it in June, and I was reading it all throughout June, July, and then about a week in August. For context's sake, I annotated quite extensively, which I will show you a flip through of later. And I divided like the top of the book into 18 or 19 sections. The whole point was that it will be divided into 50-page increments for me to read, ideally over the course of 3 weeks. But that would assume that I can read this book daily for 3 weeks, which was just not a thing. If someone could do that, good for them. Good for them, but too much for me. I just needed other stuff. It's just not something that you reach for daily. That's it for like the background on how long it took me to read, why I decided to read it in the first place. Now let's get into my actual thoughts that will be quicker than they were in the last time I did this. So let's actually get into it. I gave this book 3 stars. The first 600 pages were 5 out of 5 stars. I loved almost everything that happened throughout that page time. The second 700, I hated, and I gave it a 1. We come to an average of 3 stars. If you had asked me in the beginning, I'd say that this would be one of my favorite books of all time. But if you asked me anytime in the second half, I'd say that I'm struggling with it, that I would love to DNF it, and that I've lost the plot. Or rather, that he has lost the plot. So, for anyone who's familiar with this, he does a lot of digressions. Like, he isn't a concise novelist. I'd actually argue that he's way better of an essayist than he is a novelist, because this is not a concise story. This is not a well put together story or narrative in any way, shape, or form, because he will interrupt the action, the dialogue, the climax, whatever he wants to interrupt in order to bring you a digression. The problem with this is that some digressions will interest you and some will not, and all of them are long. In the first half, almost all of the digressions were actually interesting to me, so I let myself dive in and like go on the research trip alongside him. Like, there was a whole huge section about the history of the convent, and I was so engaged with that. That was maybe the funniest part of the book. Like, I loved that. And there was one digression about the Battle of Waterloo, which is relevant to one specific character, and I skipped that entire thing, because if there's one thing I don't care about, it's historical context about battles or wars or the government or politics. I'd rather you weave it into the story than to give me the entire history. You know, like, if I cared, I'd read it elsewhere, and I don't care. I don't care at all. So, putting the cart before the horse, which is such a funny saying that I don't even think I said correctly, but point being, digressions. If you're intimidated by this book in any way, it's usually because of the digressions, because you know that Victor Hugo is not concise. He just goes on and on and on about whatever interested him that week, that month, that year. At any given moment, he will tell you about it. He will tell you about it. Now, I would say, and a lot of people would say this, that you should start reading it to see if you're interested in what he's talking about, and then just skip or skim that section, because they are very condensed. Like, they're in one chunk, not spread throughout the narrative. Like, he will straight up halt the narrative to tell you what he wants to tell you. So my advice would be to see if you're interested in what he's talking about, and then consider if you want to read it or not. I wouldn't recommend skipping it entirely, like I didn't, rather. I skimmed it. I skimmed it to see, like, if it's referencing the main story in any way, if it's referencing characters, and a few times it was. So I'd say skim carefully, don't skip it entirely, so you can still kind of get like what the digression is for in the context of the main narrative, but skip it. You will not have lost anything if you skip his rant about the sewage system in Paris. That's the most famous one. And when I got to it, I could not believe it was as late in the story as it was. Like, all I wanted to do was hear about Jean Valjean. But no, the man had beef with the sewage system in Paris. Now, as to why I didn't like the second half, there are several reasons, but the largest one is that Victor Hugo was at that point a very different person. He wrote this book, I don't know if it was in like 2 separate time periods or more than that, but he definitely wrote some of it before he was exiled. And after he was exiled, a lot of his worldview, I think his politics too, and beliefs and many things about him changed as a person. And you can see that in this book. You can see that it's written by 2 very different men. The tone in the second half changes, the characters change, the focus of the characters change. There's so many more digressions related to politics, because I think that was the main thing that like changed about him when he was exiled, and he changed his entire political worldview. I'd actually argue that his worldview also changed, because there were several instances where he spoke about something that he had opinions on in the first half, but it was a very different focus than what it was in the first half. And in my opinion, far more pessimistic. There was this, and I was surprised by it. Like, I made a note of it in the book. There was such a strong thread of hope, even in the miserable sections of the first half. The second half just felt miserable. It felt like he was way more pessimistic as an author when he was writing the second half. I could be wrong about all of this, by the way. I'm just one of those people who doesn't really care to check to confirm my opinions, because I don't read classics for a class. They are works of literature that I read and form my own opinions on. You know, I don't need to write an essay on it, so I don't need to know the exact historical accurate comment that Victor had about his work. I'm just forming my own opinions, how I felt about the text and what it looked like or seemed like to me. I don't really care what the truth is, to be honest with you, because I don't know, I'm not a scholar. I'm not a scholar of books. I just love reading them. Which, to be fair, is sort of being a scholar or books. You're reading them and you're forming your own opinions. So, besides the point, I've gone off track. But, second half. The characters shift dramatically with how they're written and which ones are like in the focus, central to things. There are 2 characters particularly who are the main characters in the second half. If you've read it, you know who I'm speaking of. And I despised them. Like, I despised every single mention of them. I remember at one point of the book, I was hoping that they would die. Like, this was a book about miserable people, and I was hoping that they would be even more miserable, just so that I could stop reading about them. We will get into that in the spoiler section. Suffice it to say, I did not like anything about the second half. Anything. Like, I'm trying to think of a silver lining. I have nothing but positive things to say about the first half and nothing but negative things to say about the second half. It's as if I read 2 different books by 2 different authors. It's a very, very strange experience. So, like, when my parents asked like what I thought about the book, I couldn't really articulate it, because all I had left in my mouth was the sour taste of the second half and of the ending. But I remembered vividly how much I enjoyed the first half. Like, I would look forward to reading my 50 pages. I loved that first half so much, and if I were ever to reread this tome, I would be rereading the first half. Like, without a doubt, I would be rereading the first half. I loved it to absolute bits. I would recommend it. I would recommend it if it's something that you're interested in. I never thought I'd be interested in it, and let me assure you that it is far more readable than you probably think. Far more comprehensible. It's just not as dense as I thought it would be. And if the digressions get you down, again, skim them. Skim them, look up a summary online. The good thing about classics is that, like, since people study them, there's so many summaries online. Do not torture yourself unless you're actually doing this for a class. Skip them. Skip them. Like, make your reading experience better by skipping the rants of a man who didn't know how to shut up and didn't have another outlet for it, apparently. So that's my recommendation to you. And despite me hating the second half, I still think it is worth a read. at least once if you think it's something that's going to interest you. And honestly, the fact that I hated it that much is also an interesting thing in and of itself, because I feel like it's a very unpopular opinion to hate the specific character that I'm about to bitch on in the second section. So, spoiler section, let's go. Hilariously, also throughout those 2 weeks, I made a mess of this book. Pages started falling out. It's just, this is what I mean. Penguin books do not wear well. Like, one read will leave them falling apart. Like, the glue on, especially in the bigger books, just isn't that strong. The pages started falling apart. Everything creased. Everything's full of like smudges, and the spine is an absolute mess. I will do like a flip through later, so you will see the state of a Penguin book after reading it for 2 months. Spoilers. How do I get into this without instantly angering someone? I hated Marius. What is his name? Pont Merci. I want to say it's that. I'm not going to be pronouncing the French correctly. I hated his guts, okay? Like, from the fact that an entire chunk of the book was dedicated to him, which when it was finally over, I was like, thank God. Thank God. Like, let's go back to Jean Valjean and Javert and the others. Marius is just the main character in the second half. I don't want to hear an argument, even, about other people sharing the spotlight. Marius was the main character for the majority of the book. 700 pages is more than half the book. Marius is the main character. Marius is the main character, okay? There's so much focus about his internal monologues, about his life, what he's doing, his daily routine, his friends, how he joins the revolution, the army, his political opinions, his religious opinions, his opinions on Jean Valjean and Cosette. So much about Marius. Like, the entire thread of the last chunk of the book that's supposed to be like the downfall of Jean Valjean into a depression that kills him is still about Marius and how he views Jean Valjean. I hated that guy. I hated him. Not to mention that I don't care if this is controversial or not. I checked. This time I did check historical context to make sure that I'm not just complaining baselessly, but 200 years ago, it was shockingly not that normal to marry teenagers. Like, the average age for men and women to marry, mostly women, actually was between the ages of like 21 and 25. Like, most often 22, 23, 24. So around my age was actually the ordinary age to get married, because you usually need to like collect a dowry. I don't know, growing up, parents just wouldn't let their children marry when they were teenagers. It's not that it wasn't happening, but it wasn't normal. It just wasn't normal. Keep in mind that Marius, a man who is at least 2021 when he first meets Cosette, has been watching her since she was 13, 14, a child, grow up, and then the minute that she like sprouts into a woman at the age of 15, he's instantly in love with her. A man in his early 20s, mind you, who finished university, who's working as a lawyer, has watched this child grow up and begins lusting after her, says he is in love with her the moment that she hits puberty, or not hits puberty, but sprouts into puberty. I don't even know how to say this. He's immediately in love with her, so in love with her that he will die if he doesn't see her. Like, I wanted to kill myself, but preferably him first. Like, I wanted to kill him first and then maybe kill myself, because I was subjected to reading this, okay? It made me supremely uncomfortable. Yes, modern sensibilities. Someone in their 20s lusting after a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, not great. Not great. Not a great look for Marius. However, I checked and it wasn't normal even at that time. It just wasn't normal. It was normal for women to marry older men, but mostly after they were already 20. So, not great. Not great. I didn't love it. Also, Victor's focus on the romance, like, he focuses on a lot of philosophical stuff, morality stuff, humanity stuff in the first half. In the second half, that man had a hard-on for love. And I mean that in the worst way possible. First of all, it's the love between a predator and a almost child, teenager. He had an obsession with this, describing it like ad nauseum, how they will die if they don't love each other, how love at first sight is the only way that love happens, how like when you see someone you know that you love them, eternal love, like the destiny of love. He had a very weird obsession with love at first sight, which is something that I despise. It's usually something that predators use also, like, oh, she looked beautiful, she looked mature, I knew I loved her from the moment I saw her, which is never true. It's never true. Attraction and love are not the same thing. I'm getting winded. And like this, into so much. There's so much about their romance that I almost DNF'd the book. Jean Valjean also hates Marius. I know he hates him because he feels that he's losing Cosette. It's not the same as why I hate him, but I loved it so much. His small comments about despising Marius actually sent me. That was the one thing keeping me going. And the whole weird, considering that he had a decent outlook on women in the first half, like Victor. In the second half, he has strange, like Cosette also, by the way, not much agency. You can argue me on this, but she's a very dull and flat character in the second half. I thought he'd go somewhere far more interesting with her. She's essentially her mother, Fantine, in the second half, except like her story is the cautionary one. You know, like she isn't raped and abandoned by Marius, which I would have preferred, actually, because and then at least we would be rid of him. But I don't want that for Cosette, as boring as she is in the second half. I don't want her to suffer any more than she already has. And there are a few hints that like imply that they won't really be happy with each other because they're weirdly obsessed with each other. Like Marius is obsessed with her and feels like he owns her, and Cosette feels like she can't disobey him, like she will obey his every whim. Like when he starts removing her from Jean Valjean, she just goes with it, and it feels like she wanted to think what her husband thinks, she wanted to feel what he feels, she just naturally submitted to his whims. There was this whole section, I'm sorry, that described how she was pretty like weak to his wants, so to speak. I don't know how else to articulate that, but their relationship was just awful on so many levels, and the amount of time and focus that Victor put on it was just awful. It was horrendous. Like I hated every single bit of it. That is primarily why I hate that part of the book. But and also he's an awful person. Like I hate him from start to finish. I can't tell you one single positive thing about the character of Marius. I can't. Maybe that he likes to read, but like that's kind of it. Let's go to the other two. Javert, in my opinion, not enough of him. Not enough of him. Like I watched the adaptation from the 90s. I was happy there was a lot of him because I feel like he just disappears in the second half of the book. He just appears here and there and then becomes super relevant when he meets Jean Valjean again, when he unfortunately rescues Marius from the sewers, from the front, or the barricades, whatever. Javert's ending, that chapter, maybe the one highlight of the second half of the book. Like I loved his ending and his outcome. It was beautifully written. Now, my favorite character, sadly, Jean Valjean. I cared about him so much in the second half that I just kept waiting for him to die. And full spoiler, I knew he died at the end. I don't know if I saw it like as a spoiler in one of the many videos that I saw through the months while being haunted by the book. But I knew he dies in the end, so I was prepared. I was like, he's my favorite character. Like, I care about him deeply, even though he hasn't been like the main character in half the book. I care about him so much, and since I knew he was going to lose Cosette to the dickhead, I was wondering how he would go, because like it was obvious that he was going to die. I wondered if he'd like get killed out of grief, and because he's now alone, I wonder if he'd get like arrested and executed. I wonder if Ego would make like another point about executions, because he talks a lot about that, and in one of his other books, I think the story of a condemned man, the last day of a condemned man. So I thought he'd make a point that like he would be wrongfully executed, or like that his life was tragic or something. I did not expect to watch him die slowly of misery. Okay, I feel like that was the worst way to go. Like I would rather he'd have been executed than him just die of depression in like a year or two, being torn from Cosette by the awful fucking man, and just dying of sadness and misery and grief and loneliness because Javert freed him. He is not persecuted anymore and he's not going to be arrested. So there's not even that outlet anymore. Like, he can't be like arrested and killed and executed. No, he will die slowly, painfully, and absolutely miserably. And then in the last moments, when he's literally like heaving his last breaths, the couple come over to him when they find out that he's actually a fucking good person. Like, he has been this entire book, minus a few mishaps, who has just been wronged. And Marius was like disgusted by him as soon as he knew he was a convict, which, yes, the point of the book, like how convicts are viewed, even if they were imprisoned for stealing a loaf of bread. The fact that Marius was so disgusted by him immediately is just indicative. But they come to him, they're too late, he just dies of misery, and he essentially ceremoniously gives Cosette over to Marius. They bury him in an unmarked, unnamed grave, and that's it. Jean Valjean is dead. And so am I. I did cry. I did cry throughout the whole miserable ordeal, obviously, because I just love him dearly. If one thing will be taken away from this book, it is how much I love the character of Jean Valjean. Like, I adored him so much, especially in the first half. I think that's it spoiler-wise. There's nothing else. There's nothing else that I can say. Oh, there is actually one thing. The Thénardier family, I was sick and tired of them. I was sick and tired of them. Like, the 90s adaptation removes them from the story. Not completely, but, like, removes them from the story. You know, like, they're just not there a lot. And boy, did I appreciate that. That they're just the scum of the earth. Which, again, I know is the point. A lot of this is the point. But they're, like, with having to put up with Marius and the thieving, horrible, selfish, evil man and his wife who hate their children. And pretty much everyone who doesn't just sweat money. Like, I was so rooting for a very cruel and painful death. This is something that you need to know about me, okay? Unlikable, hateable characters are well and good, but you will get the Dexter out of me if you force me to put up with them for so long without some kind of retribution, okay? I am not necessarily out for blood, but if you will be putting me through these people, then I need to see them go down. I need to see them go down, or you are just an awful writer. I'm making jokes at this point, but yes, I despise them. Like, I knew that I wasn't going to get Marius to die because I knew that he marries Cosette. Like, I checked that as soon as I noticed that they would be together. I checked. But I hated it. I despised it. I hated them. There was too much of them and their brood. Yes, the whole point is that their children aren't to blame for how awful their parents are, but there was too many of them. Bottom line is actually this. There's too many characters. Too many. Like, in the back of the book, it actually only names Jean Valjean, Javert, and Cosette. And 2 out of 3 of those characters are sort of pushed to the side for 700 pages of a 1,300-page book. So yes, you know, I would say actually that Victor is not a great novelist. Like, he's really not. He's really not. Like, this is just so haphazardly put together. I don't know if they were not allowed second drafts or editors back then because of the cost of printing, or because he was in exile, he couldn't do rewrites. But someone should have told him. Someone should have told him, like, you have too many characters for people to care about, especially, like, this late into a story. I remember sitting down, reading, being at, like, page, like, 800 or something, you know, which is longer than ordinary books already, but there's 500 pages to go, and thinking, like, why am I being introduced to new characters? Why am I being introduced to new characters? You know, how am I expected to give a crap about what these college students think about the political unrest of the state? I just want to know what's going to happen to Jean. Like, I don't care. I don't care what they think. There are chapters upon chapters where Marius's roommates discuss politics or women or whatever. So many chapters where I don't think Marius is there sometimes, and they just discuss their different opinions. I don't care. There's a chapter where they introduce each of the roommates, and I'm expected to care and remember who they are. I don't. Perhaps it's just my incapacity, but I read so many books with large casts of characters. I've read so many books where you have to keep track of many. I've read The Wheel of Time, for crying out loud, okay? And the key to doing it right is that you keep introducing new characters, but you keep the old ones. Okay, you keep the old ones. I would not care about Aes Sedai number 723 if I haven't seen Rand for 3 books. You know, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't. But I can keep track of her because I see Rand every book. And Matt, and Perrin, and Nynaeve and Moraine. Okay? So I can actually remember and keep track of important Aes Sedai number 23. Or Aiel, or whatever. Not so in this book. Because I kept getting introduced to new stuff I didn't care about, and I kept losing Jean Valjean, because realistically he didn't have anything to do. He's just an onlooker. He's just an onlooker in the second half, because Javert only has, like, a scene with him at the very end, and he dies when Cosette gets married, but apart from that, he's just Cosette's companion and someone who's going to glare at Marius when he comes over. That's all he does in the second half of the story. And I thought he was the main character. So I think that's it for the rant. I'm happy with it because I feel like I articulated everything that I wanted to articulate correctly. And these are my opinions. These are my thoughts. That is my review of the book. Let's just get into the outro before I think of something else to say. The next most important thing is, will I keep reading Victor Hugo? And yes, I will, because I bought this book. It's a beautiful vintage penguin that, like, I got off Vinted for, like, what, €8? It's Notre Dame de Paris, which is a lot shorter, I say, even though it's like 500 pages, but this is laughable. In comparison, this is laughable. Also, the thing that drew me to this is that I am familiar with the story, because unlike Lemmy's, where I didn't even finish the musical, I have finished the Disney film, so I kind of know, like, the baseline of it. Also, I'm far more interested in his commentary of this now that I'm done with Lemmy's, and this is also older. And we've established that I get along very well with younger Victor Hugo, but not the post-exile one. So I'm hoping that I'll have more luck with this, and I will read it, just not quite yet. Like, I've had quite enough of him and his digressions for now. But I would love to hear your thoughts, if you have them. You know, like, what did you think of either of these books? Do you think I will like Hunchback, even though I did not like more than half of Lemmy's? Why do my cats decide to do things right when I have to speak for the second time? Regardless, I hope you found this interesting. I hope you didn't mind the rant. And I hope you keep in mind that even though I shat all over some of the book, I cannot overstate how much I actually loved the first half. Like, I thought it would be one of my favorite books of all time. I teared up because I was moved several times in the first half. And I will show you the flip through of the annotations so you can get a little bit of a feel, which, I mean, is going to be spoilery, but the main reason that I'm doing this is because I want to show off the comments that I use, and I will absolutely, like, flip through quickly, but you can pause if you want to. But I amuse myself with my comments, okay? There's nothing insightful about comments, because I don't write in books to be insightful or to study them. I write because it's a bit of an outlet. You know, I will just put down a clear sticky note and be like, I hate this man. So I would just do a quick flip through, maybe just of the first half. You don't need to see the second half. It's just me bitching about how much I hate Marius. But let's just do the quick flip through, and then I will be letting you go. I do want to hear someone's thoughts, though, because I rarely do specific reviews, but I feel like something of this magnitude just couldn't fit into a wrap-up of any kind. Like, it needed its own video, so why not? If you like the format of this, maybe I'll do more. Let's just get into the flip through. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video. Okay, let me just show you the state of the book. These are the tabs. These are the tabs. It's extensive in the first half. These are, like, the top tabs. Let me These are the top tabs. And this is the spine. My God, it's cracked, but I don't think you're going to be able to see that. Anyway, I don't even know where to begin. This is just very difficult to do, so I'm going to do my best here. Okay, here's, for example, one notation. Like I wrote to the side, I wrote a little bit on the page, and it's, as you can see, it's sticking out. So yes, that's my system. It's super difficult to do these. I know people have like the overhead cameras, but unfortunately I do not. I'm just going to quickly show you just what it happens to look like. There's one. If you're interested in my system, I also have a video about that. So there's another one. And this is what an annotated paperback actually looks like. This is, here we have the first markers. This is what an annotated paperback looks like without writing in books. These thin ones were very useful because they fit in the margins quite well. There's a page that I, in particular, really loved. And one thing that I have to highlight is that halfway through, like I found these red tabs, which I'd never seen before, and I started using red for stuff that like I despised. I used it a few times, as you can see. Most of this is for Marius. Here I use it for the Bernardiers. And at the top, I actually used, as you can see, a few red tabs for like stuff that I just hated so much that I wanted to skip. I think this one is the Waterloo one. I'm just gonna actually like go through like that because there's a big one before we go into the new part. There's also another red one. If you find any of my comments funny, that's great because like I find them funny too. I'm not going to lie to you. That's half of the reason why I do them, because I just amuse myself. There's two reds here. Is that when Marius shows up? No, it's actually the nuns or priests or whatever. There's a lot of funny tabs in the nuns section of the book. Like I found that part so hilarious. This actually kind of amused me. But yeah, I know later I definitely like start complaining about his loved that. Later I definitely start complaining about his aggressions, not, and here is the beginning of the end. So there's not much to say in the second half. I'm just trying to take you to an interesting spot or something. Got all the red ones, mostly me just whining about Marius. Here's a big one. Here's a big one. I even started using, like, they're also transparent, by the way. It's just that they're not over text here. They were just very pleasant to write on. Here I had a lot to say. I had a lot to say. I'm sorry, I'm just laughing at myself here. Then there were just so many chunks when I had absolutely nothing to mark because, like, I just did not care anymore. And you can see that, like, when you look at it. There we got this. I love how the yellow ones feel. Is there something? Yeah. Here we are. Yeah. It's just me whining at this point. Then there's just a lot of sadness, like, as he was dying. And that is the entire book, and I put like a mark so I know where the book ends. And the notes begin. There's 100 pages of notes, by the way, and yeah. That is it. I don't know if that was like a riveting flip through, but I don't really care. I just wanted to show it off a little bit since I talked about it so much in that video, and because this is like, you know, like a fun achievement for me. This is 2 months of work and suffering in this case. So there we are.